Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure.
And let you kick it off. If there's one session that you don't want to miss today, it's this one. And get your notepad handy. You'll need it. So, Adam.
Thanks,
take it
David,
away,
very
sir.
much. Hey, good morning, everybody. So as you can see, I was excited to go to Louisville and tweeted on my way down here, David, I'll see you soon, pointed to Louisville, to which he replied, sounds great, better make it Lexington. Well, of course, this conference has been in Louisville, and so we have our event team booked the hotel room here, so I had a place to stay, but I booked a trip to Louisville, not thinking twice, and so I scrambled. Of course, I played it off. That's what I meant, David. And didn't tell him. He was none the wiser. Meanwhile, I'm scrambling for the last ticket on the 3:20 flight to Lexington, so I'm not driving 80 miles, and told him I had a funny story when I arrived. And I actually did make the flight. I got in okay, and here I am. So, David, your tweet that you thought was a joke actually saved me from flying to the wrong city. So thank you, social media, for making me look smarter than I am, apparently. So we're going to talk today about hiring in the automotive space. And my goal for the next 45 minutes is for you to walk out of here with a couple of actionable takeaways that you can bring back to the store on Monday when you get back. So let's jump right in. But what I'd like for you to do, if you have questions or want to know more about something, raise your hand, stop me, and we'll go deep. So let's talk for a second about the opportunities for operational improvement in your stores. Courtesy of our friends at Driving Sales from 2015 data, if you look at the amount of money flowing through automotive retail in non-personnel expenses, it's about $9 billion a year, keeping stores up and running. That's facilities, utilities, just the business of keeping a retail environment running. Then you've got inventory, and for several years, dealers have been getting paid to take cars from manufacturers. And that's changing, of course, and is a cash flow risk to most operators. And we go to our 20 groups, and we talk about how to turn cars a day faster or shave a quarter point off of our marketing expense. And meanwhile, 70% of our cost structure is in our payroll system. And we don't spend any time talking about that, right? We talk about all the other parts of the business and how to optimize it one click better, and we're turning over salespeople at 72% a year. So if you tell me where the big opportunity is in this business to improve how we run our business, I believe the people side of this business is the last untapped ROI in automotive retail. Now, raise your hand if you have a better process for buying office supplies than hiring people. It's most dealerships. Most businesses have no process. So we're going to talk about some ways to do that right. So we'll talk about this concept of a talent ecosystem, and then I'm going to give you some results on employment branding and how to better position yourself to find the high potential talent in your market. It's always been tough to be in this business, but we face increasing pressures right now. And you're living through this. And I think you already know you can't control interest rates. And you can't control your manufacturer. And you can't control changing consumer tastes. And you can't control transportation as a service. And you can't control threats to the franchise business model from operators like Tesla. The only thing you really have 100% control over in your business is who you put on your payroll. It's completely within your control. Most other major decisions are contingency planning that are based on your market or manufacturer or the environment that you're in. But who you put on your payroll is entirely within your control. And I would argue it's the most important decision your managers make every single day. And the question you should be asking yourself is, am I preparing my leaders in my organization, or am I prepared as the leader of my organization to put the right people in the right seat in this company? It starts with a brand. And in this industry, we know lots about brand. You are branding yourself in your market every day to your consumer. But what are you doing to brand yourself as a potential employer? Because as we'll talk about, there are similarities that are completely transferable. And something interesting happens when you invest in your employment brand. What happens when your consumer brand gets better? What do you get more of? You get more leads. You get more opportunities to sell. Well, it's no different in hiring. If your employment brand is solid, you're going to get more people trying to work for you. You're going to have higher quality leads. You're going to have more of them. And what happens when you have more and better leads? You hire more and better people. A better brand leads to better applicants, higher quality and of higher volume, and that higher volume will naturally lead to you hiring more of the right people. What happens when you start hiring better people is you find out who your good managers are. Because great people do not want to work for bad managers. And the question I always get is, how can I hire great people if my managers aren't very good? The answer is, I can hire great people, but I probably won't keep them. So going down this path, which I would argue for you is completely necessary for the future of your business, is going to lead to some turmoil in leadership. But most general sales managers or general managers are in their spot because they sold the most cars and got promoted. Not necessarily because they were the best leaders of people. So another huge opportunity in this industry that I won't go into today is providing tools to managers and leaders to be leaders of people, not just taskmasters for units and ROs, okay? Now, when your managers get better, the culture lifts. And this cycle repeats itself. And you have to start somewhere. If you look at this whole ecosystem, it can be overwhelming. You try to tackle it all at once. My advice to you is, if you're ready to start hiring intentionally and being better at this, start with your employment brand. It's the first step in the process. Everything else is a downstream result. Even if you just get more and higher quality leads, everything else will lift. It's the first step. Without a strong employment brand, there's really not a lot you can do. You're going to be struggling, begging people to walk in the door. You're going to be putting any warm body that can fog a mirror in your open spots, and you're going to be seeing who sticks. Hire 5, hopefully 2 work. Hire 5, hopefully 2 work 40 years from now. Let's not do that. Let's do some true false real quick. So I know we're opening things up this morning, so we're going to get your brain engaged. I'm going to ask you a couple of true false questions because everybody wants the silver bullet, right? Tell me what I should look for. Give me one test I can give an applicant that'll tell me they're going to be good or bad. So true or false, companies that screen for values have better performance than those that screen for intelligence. Raise your hand if you think that statement is true. That statement is false. It's false. In a landmark Harvard Business School research study, what they found was, when you start comparing individual measurements, one versus the other, screening for a values match with your organization and screening for raw intelligence was a higher predictor of success. That runs completely counter to everything you hear at every conference you've ever been to. But the research shows screening for intelligence is actually more effective than screening for a values match. As we'll see, it's not the only thing you should be measuring. Okay, next question. Conscientiousness is a better predictor of job performance than intelligence. Conscientiousness is a $5 word that means things like attention to detail, customer service orientation, things like that. Raise your hand if you think this statement is true. Screening for conscientiousness, false. Right, now you see what's going on? Okay, now you're with how this is going to go. Intelligence wins. Intelligence beats conscientiousness as a single measure of job performance. Okay, third, integrity tests. These are tests that tell you whether or not your F&I manager is going to forge a signature. That kind of stuff. They're not very effective because so many people lie on them. Is that a true statement? Raise your hand. No, that's false. Ironically, people who have low integrity don't lie on integrity tests, which you'd think would be the time when they'd want to do that, but they don't. The research shows people don't lie on integrity tests, even people with low integrity. They hold up. It's completely valid. So you can give these for positions where people are in fiduciary responsibility. The other big, I would argue, myth in this business is being smart bad for you in this business, in any role? Who thinks that's true? That's false. It doesn't matter if we're talking about lot attendants or general managers or group vice presidents. Intelligence is never, in any case, anything but helpful for the role. Now, when you hire people of higher potential and higher cognitive ability, you're going to need to provide them continuing and ongoing challenge or they will leave you. Another favorite. There are 4 personality types like Myers-Briggs or DISC. Raise your hand if you think that's true. That's not true. There is no one personality profile that will tell you anything predictive about somebody's ability to do a job. What personality profiles tell you is that Adam is an optimist. Adam thinks he can sell cars, but it doesn't tell you that I can actually do it. It doesn't tell you I can actually be a service advisor. It just tells you I think that I like people or I'm gregarious. And if you're using personality tests as your only basis for hiring people, what you will find is the predictability is no better than a coin flip as a single measurement. Coin flip. So what I tell people is if you don't want to fix what you're doing, just start hiring all the tails because it's a really quick process and you're going to get it right at least 50% of the time. I'm going to save lots of time. So here's where you can feel better about yourself because Harvard Business School surveyed thousands of HR leaders with an average of 15 years of tenure in their job, and the percentage on the left is the percentage of professionals that got these wrong. Everybody misses the values one because it's so ingrained in all the discussion about building great organizations. And it's not to say that values don't matter, but what it says is people have no idea what they're doing when it comes to hiring. What is the least predictive measurement? Job experience. Job experience. And for anybody into statistics, a 0.13 correlation, if you look at a line, a correlation to that line, a 0.13 looks like someone fired a shotgun at a piece of paper. It's just no correlation at all. Job experience doesn't matter, is what this says. No correlation. Followed by personality profiling, no correlation. Emotional intelligence, EQ, no correlation. Reference checks, no correlation. Integrity testing, you start to see some light correlation. Cognitive ability, which is intelligence, you actually see some fairly strong correlation between the result and the impact on the job or the ability to perform in the job. The most effective are a combination of all of these things. So what a multi-measure assessment means is that you are measuring all of this stuff. It's cognitive ability, it's integrity, conscientiousness, right? You're understanding the personality of the person coming into the organization. You're doing the interviews. It's all of it, which tells you hiring is a process. It's a core and critical business process. It's not a one-step deal. Hope the person works out. If you want to do this right, you have to make this every bit as core and critical as any other part of your operation. There is no shortcut to getting this right. And if it's 70% of your cost structure, don't you think it's important to figure out how to do this right? Because otherwise, we're just going to keep blowing through people in this business, and it's costing you somewhere around $400,000 per year per store to do it the way you're doing it now. And I'll show you why. Some other data to take note of. This is the size of the entry-level labor force in the United States. Between 2002 and 2012, it dropped 5%. It's going to drop another 13% by 2022. So that has implications certainly for consumer behavior, but what it means for hiring and staffing in this industry is that we're fishing from a much smaller pond. Gen Xers like me are not having enough kids to offset the number of millennials, which is a massive demographic, moving through the market. There aren't enough, so the workforce is going to drop. So even if you're great at this, the number of people available to you is going to be less than it is today and every year through 2022. So it's important that you put your best foot forward and compete. And unfortunately, when you look at the NADA workforce study, the most important measurements are going the opposite direction. But what this means is that in your market, if you get this right, you will have a competitive advantage unlike anyone else in your market. Because it is difficult to do this correctly. It is a commitment, but if you do it well, because it's so hard to do well, you are in a position to win in your market with the best team. So let's talk for a second about car insurance. So State Farm doesn't need to meet you in person to know if you have had 4 accidents and you have a 16-year-old in your house and a sports car in the garage, that you're probably going to cost them some money. Maybe not you individually, but people like you that have your risk profile are much more likely to have an outcome of filing a claim for something. They don't sometimes take a look at you and go, you know what? You look like you're a pretty good driver. Come on, let's give you a shot. Right? They would be out of business. They ask the same questions. What kind of car do you drive? How many miles do you drive? Where do you live? Have you been to college? Do you have any children under the age of 18 in the house? Are you married? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because they know those pieces of information are highly correlated to outcomes. And the hiring process is no different. There are pieces of information that you can get that will give you an indication of whether or not somebody is going to be a better or worse fit for the job. And I'm going to share with you what the 4 big ones are right now and how you can use them. So as we talked about before, 50% of what predicts success in somebody's job has nothing to do with what they've ever done. So if you can't just read through a resume and have a conversation with somebody, what do you do? Well, many of you are familiar with this concept of Moneyball. What I'm about to share with you for hiring works in credit scoring, your FICO score, same thing. Certain decisions or outcomes you've had in the past related to your financial decisions will very likely predict your future financial outcomes, right? That's why FICO scores work. It works in baseball, right? Works in baseball, and it works in hiring. So here are your sabermetrics for recruiting in no particular order, and I will say that David will be able to send this presentation out, so I'll make sure you guys all get this if you're scribbling furiously. Attitude, accountability, prior related job success, and culture fit. And we're going to dig into each one of these things for a few minutes. Attitude is defined in this sense as a positive disposition toward work that persists across job experiences. So it doesn't mean you like this individual job. It means you like working. You have a positive attitude towards working. And many studies and meta-studies have shown overwhelmingly that people with a positive disposition towards work outperform their peers over time consistently. A positive disposition towards work leads to better outcomes. That's other very interesting research conducted by the University of Minnesota over a 20-year period on identical twins separated at birth tells a pretty interesting story. So anybody in here a twin? Do we have any twins in the room? All right, couple. Identical twins? Okay. So identical twins separated at birth. What they studied was, well, lots of things, but their attitude toward working. And what they found was, for twins separated at birth and measured over their adult lives, it didn't matter if they lived in the Southwest or the Northeast, or were blue collar or white collar, or hourly or salaried, married, divorced, high school, college education, dropout, didn't matter. Identical twins separated at birth report statistically identical levels of job satisfaction, which tells you if you control for genetics, attitude is the same. Which means that attitude is more likely hardwired behavior than it is acquired behavior. Which means that the person in your store walking around with the rain cloud over their head might have a couple of good days, but they're wired to have more bad days than good days. And if better attitude leads to better performance over time, and we're thinking about hiring as risk assessment, shouldn't we be hiring people that have positive attitudes towards work? Yes. So how do you do that? Well, you can ask a few pretty simple questions in an interview, one of which is, tell me about the last time you were so frustrated at your job that you felt like walking out. Raise your hand if that was yesterday. Right? So ask the question. Tell me about a time you were so frustrated you were ready to walk out the door. Now, here's the most important follow-up. Why did you feel that way? And listen for the language. Listen for the answer. Someone with a positive disposition toward work will go out of their way to tell you why that negative experience actually led to learning or some kind of positive outcome. It'll happen every time. Well, the boss is really tough to work for. I had just had it. I decided I was going to start looking. Okay, well, so what was going on? How do you feel about this place? Well, it's a tough place to work, but they gave me my first opportunity, and I appreciate that. That's the kind of answer that indicates a positive disposition toward work. Right? It's just a positive spin on it. Someone with a negative disposition toward work, you've all talked to them. They're the people in the interview that tell you that their boss is a jerk. Or this place, they have no idea what they're doing. These guys are nuts. Get me out of here. I cannot wait to leave this place. And they'll be saying that about you 6 months later down the street at the next store. Just don't hire those people. Just don't do it. Because it increases the risk over time that you're going to hire people that aren't going to work out. Next, sense of accountability. The psychology term for this is locus of control. And there are two types. There's an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. This is the degree to which you believe the things that happen in your life are attributable to your actions or decisions versus the actions or decisions of others or other events. So someone with an internal locus of control, when you have the month-end meeting, will say something to you like, I should have done a better job with the shift management so that we had the right number of people on the lot that Saturday. I didn't staff it correctly. I'm sorry. That's my fault. I own that. Or we had the incentives wrong. Or I didn't have the right cars on the lot. That's my fault. Internal locus, I own that. Someone with an external locus of control will tell you the weather was bad. Or the finance office blew a couple of deals. Or we didn't have the right inventory. Or somebody else made it so that I couldn't do what I said I was going to do. It's not their fault. Or it's not my fault, it's their fault. And that's an external locus of control. And people with an external locus of control are 40% less likely to be top performers. 40. And you can figure out where somebody sits on this spectrum pretty quickly in an interview. You simply ask the question, tell me about the last aggressive goal you set for yourself that you failed to achieve. When was the last time you set an aggressive goal but you didn't hit it? And then the important question, the follow-up. Why didn't you hit it? What was going on there? Someone with an internal locus of control will answer that interview question and say things like, I set the goal too high. I was too aggressive. I didn't put in enough hours. I didn't prepare properly. I didn't tell my manager what I needed to be successful. I own that. Someone with an external locus will tell you all of the reasons why somebody else set the goal too high for them, or the reason why they didn't hit it wasn't their fault. And people fall on pretty binary terms into one or the other category. There's really no gray area here. You can't kind of own it. You either do or you don't, and people tend to be internal or external locus over the course of their professional life. So if people with an internal locus are 40% more likely to be top performers, let's hire people that own results. And you can figure that out with some targeted interview questions. Okay, related job success. This is the resume, but it's not the way that you think. This is someone that's had their performance measured. Have you worked in a role where your performance was measured? And you can have your performance measured if you're a 16-year-old working your first job at the hardware store. You can have your performance measured through the point of sale system in a fast food restaurant. You can have your performance measured as the front desk associate of a hotel. Right? It doesn't mean professional, white-collar, heavy systems and management. What it means is when I ask you the question, how did you know when you went home at the end of the day whether or not you had a good day? How did you know? I want to hear numbers. I want somebody to tell me, if I had less than 3 refunds in a day, I knew that was a good day because I was measured on number of refunds issued in a day. Or if I made 60 phone calls, I knew I had a good day. If I processed X number of orders, I had a good day. That was a good day for me. Somebody that said, well, I don't know, I didn't get yelled at, right? Don't really know. Not sure. Every day was kind of the same. Some days were different. I came in and I did my best. It doesn't mean that they're not a high performer. What it means is the likelihood of them being a high performer just dropped considerably. I don't want someone in the organization who has never had their performance measured before, because I don't know how they're going to take or acclimate to it. So if you are managing performance, as I suspect everyone in this room is, because you're here at this conference, you're measuring performance and you're trying to get better, you introduce risk into your organization when you hire people who have never worked in an environment where they've been accountable for performance measurement. So ask the question in the interview. What were you accountable for, and how did you know when you left every day whether or not you had a good day? And dig for that. Was there a number? What do you mean? Well, was there some number or goal you had to hit? The people that know their goals, their daily numbers, their weekly or monthly numbers, and give them back to you tend to be better performers. And then finally, culture fit. This is the degree to which the candidate shares similar values and beliefs with the organization and actually wants to do the job. Right? Not take your job as a placeholder, but actually wants to do the job, which is the part most people forget about. You could be a great fit but not actually want to do it. But let's focus on culture. Culture doesn't mean the values on the plaque in the lobby. Now, those are important. But what I'm talking about are the values that you have as a manager, because that is the most important value system. So Jim Collins, in one of his first books called Built to Last, so most of us know Good to Great, but Built to Last came before that. And Built to Last is all about starting a business and an enterprise for the long run. And in there is an exercise called Mission to Mars. Has anybody done this exercise before? So, can I have a volunteer? Who's feeling good this morning?
I'll do it.
There we go. Okay. All right. Congratulations. What's your name?
Peyton.
Peyton.
Yeah.
Hi, Peyton. Congratulations. We have discovered life on Mars.
Fantastic.
Yep, pretty cool. I mean, it's the biggest discovery in the history of humanity. And all of humanity has selected you, to decide which one human being we send to Mars to represent us in the most important meeting that could result in total annihilation if we blow it, or all of these untold advances if we get it right. Now, I want you can't send yourself.
Okay.
Who's the one person in your organization that you would pick for the most important thing in the history of not only the organization, but all of humanity?
Do you want me to pick somebody from our
Just think about them. Do you know who that person is?
Probably.
Your one best person? Do you know who that is?
More than one, so I'm trying to narrow it down.
Got to pick one.
To go, and their role would be to establish everything.
We're not quite sure.
Okay.
We're going to put them in a capsule and fire them into space. And they are going to have to figure it out.
Okay.
Who are you sending?
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
Does everybody know who their person is? Who their one best person is? Okay, tell me why you picked the person. Give me some adjectives.
Intelligent.
Intelligent.
Executes.
Okay, they execute.
Resourceful, like scrappy. do
Okay,
things
scrappy, it's important.
Yeah.
Hurling through space.
Good. Well, getting things established.
Yep.
Can work really well independently,
Okay, independent.
and natural leader.
Natural leader. Peyton, thank you very much. All right, round of applause. Give me some more. Who else? You're thinking about your one best person. Give me some more adjectives.
Creative.
I'm sorry? Creative. Creative. What else? Personable. Persistent. We don't know, Peyton. We've never been to Mars. Okay, see how everybody's a little bit different? They're one, but your definition of a one best person, your adjectives are different. But what you've just done is document your core values as a manager or leader. Your bulleted list of adjectives you just picked to describe your one best person, that's what you care about as a manager. And if you hire someone who works in a way that's different from that description, it doesn't mean they're going to be a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're going to be a poor performer. But what it means is you are going to view their work as less valuable than someone who does act that way. That's what the research says. Human beings we're wired like that. People that fit into your view of what makes someone successful, right? Whether they're creative or personable or persistent or extroverted or heads down introverted, right? I like people who are out there with the energy. I like people who sit there and just do their job. Both people can hit the same amount of activity or output, but what you view as more valuable depends on your own value system. So this is the one that makes or breaks top performers. And it's the reason why if you take the top sales performer from store A and literally move them to the same make in the same market, they fail to be a top performer more than 50% of the time. Did they suddenly become bad at selling? No. Their environment changed, their manager changed, the systems that made them successful changed. It wasn't the person, it was management. It was management. Okay. Any questions on these? We're going to move on and talk about how we attract the right people in the first place. So when you ask Gen Y millennials looking for work what they value in a career, they tell us the following three things in this order: career growth, pay stability, so not most pay, but pay stability, and flexible hours, a balanced life. What do we offer in this industry? Pretty much the exact opposite of all three of the most important things that this incoming demographic is looking for. High commission jobs, really tough hours, and limited career progression. So we sit here thinking we have a recruiting issue, and I'm telling you we don't. We have a marketing problem. We have a marketing problem. So here's my job description. Raise your hand if you would put your friend, son, daughter, neighbor's kids into the following job. This job is you're going to park cars, you're going to wash cars, you're going to get yelled at all the time, and you're never going to see your family again. And some of you were thinking, I did sign up for that. It's exactly what I did. Who would take this job? A lot of people. A lot of people would take this job. For 25 years, Enterprise Holdings has been the single largest employer of college graduates in the United States. Did anyone come through this program? Okay, what's this job? It's a lot attendant in a suit. A lot attendant in a suit. That's exactly what it is. But I'm sure they didn't tell you. What's your name? Nathan. You know what, Nathan? Here's the deal. We know you're looking for a job. This job's going to kind of suck. You're going to show up at the airport at about 4 in the morning in a suit. You're going to wash cars. Your shoes are going to be soaked. You're just going to run back and forth. People are going to scream at you. You're going to be busiest on weekends and holidays. Kiss your family and friends goodbye. You're never going to see them again. They did not say that. What did they say?
They showed me a graph of potential.
They look like that? Kind of. Nathan said they showed him a pay scale and a graph for potential. Because what Enterprise does so well, and why I admire the way that they do this, is because they say, look, this job is not for everyone. But if you think this is for you, if you are motivated to have a career and grow and be successful, I want you to take a look at us. Because all I'm asking for is 2 years from you. If you give me 2 years, one of two things are going to happen. You're going to come out 2 years knowing everything there is to know about running a $50 million frontline retail operation, customer service, operations, hiring, management, inventory, sales, marketing, all of it. And you'll be marketable anywhere with that skill set. And if you leave in 2 years to go work for someone else, I'm going to be the happiest person in the world because I will have done my job as a manager. But for about 10% of people, they make it through this program. And let me show you how if you build your career with us, by the time you're 30, 35, you can be making $500,000 as a group manager or area manager, or $1 million a year as a vice president of this organization. And let me show you all the examples of people here in this store that are doing that right now. Let me introduce you to them. You see the difference? It could be this, or let me tell you how working with us is about something more than a job. And it doesn't matter if you're a single point store or a large group. You have the ability to have this conversation with everyone that walks through the door looking to work for you. Or you could do this. Straight out of the DMS with the caps lock key on. Straight to Craigslist for an actual ad for a retail group in Chicago that I've hidden because you'd know who they were. You're competing with organizations that are doing this with marketing tools like this. It's not going to work. David knows I like to brag about Schomp and their career site, Schomp Automotive, 4 rooftops in Colorado. Not a huge organization, but they are great operators, and they have what I think is one of the best career sites in automotive retail. You can check it out at careers.schomp.com. Here's what they've figured out. Guys, the consumer and the job applicant are the same darn person. It's the same person. How do you know that 25-year-old coming to your your store URL is looking for a job or looking for a car? How do you know? How do you know they wouldn't decide in looking for a job to shop for a car if you spoke to them in a way that was meaningful? But we spend all of our time focused on the consumer brand and none on the marketing, all right? And so quickly, as I round third here on the presentation, we've got a couple of minutes left. These are the questions to ask about your brand. And as a homework assignment, I'm going to encourage you to get out your mobile phone and try to apply to a job at your own store. What percentage of your car leads come through a mobile device? 70%? David, was it 60, 70% of leads originate on a mobile device? Guess what happens if your job site is not mobile optimized? 70% of people also start a job search on a phone now. You're losing 70% of your job leads. You don't have a recruiting issue. You have a funnel problem. And when you optimize your career site for the way this generation wants to look for jobs, you speak to them, you tell them what's in it for them. You make it really easy to send in a resume, right? Guess what document you don't have on your mobile phone? Your resume. How many of your career sites make it mandatory? Probably 90%. Or you make them fill out a tax form to apply for the job or set up an account. Okay? So with that, David, I think that's time. I have a minute or two for any follow-up questions, but thank you very much for having me here this morning.
Raise your hand if you have a question, guys. Feel free.
Yes, sir.
So I kind of missed, or maybe, how do you figure out if someone's a good culture fit? Is there a question that you can ask a candidate to help determine if they fit into your culture?
That's a great question. So the question is, how do you ask the questions to determine if somebody is a good culture fit or not? This is why it's a little bit gray area. The short answer is no. What you have to understand what your value system is, and that's that exercise we did. And your job as a manager in that interview is to determine whether or not they've worked in the way that you know you value. Right? Is this so you can't ask questions like, describe your work style to me. When you're at your best, describe yourself. If you were looking at yourself in a mirror when you're at your best at work, what are you doing? Are you walking around? Are you sitting at the desk? Or what systems are you using to be successful? Just tell me how you're successful. What does that mean for you? What CRM, what tools, describe your ideal manager. Those kinds of questions are effective, but it's really more, this is really where you're doing a gut check. It's the only part of the process where I would say, you're pretty tuned into whether or not someone's going to be a fit in their work style for you. And I know it's a soft answer, but there's no real way to know the answer to that question. Are they a culture fit?
Good question, though. Do you want to tell us about your book?
Sure, yeah, thanks. So David wanted me to put this up here. I actually have, hot off the press, an advanced reviewer copy for you I brought down here, because you asked for it. So I have one of the first copies. So this will be out in March. But this is a book all about the business of hiring people, and it's got lots of automotive retail experience and case studies in there, along with other businesses. But it's a blueprint for how to do this right. And so Chapter 1 is available for you for download now. And if when the book comes out in March, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it. Okay.
Cool.
And
awesome.
The website, thebestteamwins.com, has podcasts and articles and all kinds of stuff. And we just interviewed Kathy Tripp, actually the head of HR for Phil Long Automotive in Colorado Springs, who talked about how she's built a high-performance people culture at Phil Long on the podcast, which is on iTunes. So anybody who wants more information, Bree and I will be over here in a little bit. But
excellent. And we'll have a live demo from Hireology at 10:25 this morning. And I think that's where we'll really get to see, as I mentioned to you all yesterday, we set up the live demos this year because we wanted to give you all access to some of the things you don't see when you're trying to walk around to the booths. So some of the vendors opted to do the live demos. So 10:25 and you'll get to that. And also just make note. But if you could give a warm round of applause for Adam, I'd sure appreciate it.
Thank you.